Hello, and welcome to the Lucidess podcast, where I explore everything, and I mean everything. Today, I'm going to explore boundaries, and I'm going to explore them by not exploring them. Yes, that is a thing. I just made it up. I probably didn't. I doubt many things are made up. Everything's known. Enough rambling. Okay, so recently I was talking to my therapist, and I realized I said the words, and as I said them, I realized that that's something that I'd been moving toward and hadn't realized it till I spoke them aloud. And she said something about boundaries. We were talking about a person in my life, and I said, that word doesn't make sense to me anymore. The word that comes to mind is structure. And I said, and I began to feel like the word boundaries no longer makes sense to me, meaning it no longer fits in the puzzle piece that is me. At least the way I understand boundaries, the way that I have used boundaries in the past, no longer is a part of this puzzle piece that I'm creating, this new one. So the word structure, I told her, I said, what comes to mind for me is this word structure, that I build a structure in such a way that I don't need a boundary, that my structure simply does not allow for that certain behavior to affect me, so to speak. And the metaphor I used was, I said, okay, so say there's someone that's like wants to come up to me and basically turn on my water tap and just drain all my water away. They just want to use my water, so to speak, like a neighbor coming over and hooking their hose up to your water your water faucet and being like, okay, I'm going to drain all your water away. If I build my structure in such a way that is not accessible, well, then I don't really need a boundary. Someone will come up and be like, oh, here's this person, and there's no faucet there. There's no faucet for me to drain from. And I don't believe I'm splitting hairs here. I don't believe this is a nuance. I believe it's actually very important in my growth process, which is building a structure is different than building a boundary. Energetically, it's completely different. A structure has an integrity. The whole thing is a whole. It's built in a certain way to be able to perform certain things, to be able to be the thing that I am. A boundary is something that I would say is not necessarily, for me, does not feel integrated. That the boundary is something I need to sort of like put out there for a special reason or a special cause because I am not able to structurally deal with a certain issue. There is nothing wrong with boundaries. I have used boundaries. I probably still use them, but that is shifting for me. And the shift is I no longer need to have these sort of unintegrated parts. I no longer need to build these parts outside of myself to protect what I cannot protect, or to, I guess that's, yeah, because I am understanding now that I have the capacity to build a structure, this energetic structure, emotional structure, mental structure, physical structure that is me, in such a way that it can do what I need to do. Whatever I feel called to do, it's going to be able to do that. And I won't need to walk around, flashing up certain, suddenly erecting certain boundaries and dismantling certain boundaries depending on sort of like who I'm with or where I am. And that's the integrity that I feel like I've been called to live my entire life. The integrity to be myself wherever I am. The reason this is interesting is in this conversation with my therapist, we were talking about different relationships I've had in sort of like different communities and how I can be a chameleon. And I have seen nothing wrong with that. It's absolutely gotten me here. But that's, and while that's a survival technique, and honestly, like, I think it's an amazing gift. I love it. I don't have a problem with it. But there has been an element where I haven't had full integrity in all the spaces I've moved in, because I sort of was erecting the quote boundary that would make me like safe, would make me unseen, camouflaged in that space. So I am, and have been able to move into certain spaces and communities and be unseen, or at least seen in the way I want to be seen, which is the same thing as being unseen. Like, I'll show you what I want to show you, but other parts of me I'm going to keep unseen. And I did that for good reasons. I didn't know how to protect myself. I didn't know how to integrate all the parts of myself. I didn't know how to hold myself in totality, in wholeness, in fullness. I didn't know how to trust in the process of my becoming, and my becoming in relationship with other people, with other communities, with society as a whole, with my soul. So this all feels, I remember the word integrity came to me, I don't know, like we're going to say 15 years ago, maybe longer than that. It was about the time when I was dating the person that was a bit like a sociopath. And there was such a lack of integrity in everything that person said and did. And I was just like, oh my God, I have to have integrity in my life, or I'm going to slippery slope my way down into some kind of sociopathic, tendencies. So I really began working hard with integrity. And I would say integrity for me at that point was boundaries, hardcore boundaries. Very useful, very helpful. Glad I did it. So totally there. But that's not where I am today. Integrity for me is now that all that I am is built into and as an integrous structure. That the structure of who I am is integrous and moves from place to place, from community to community, from relationship to relationship. And not that I'm going to be the same in every relationship, because obviously I am relating to life, but that the structure, there's a constancy to it. And I was going to say I don't need to suddenly erect boundaries. I don't think that's true. Maybe the word is I don't need to erect so many boundaries. I will need fewer boundaries. There's possibly always going to be a situation where you're suddenly erecting a boundary in a way you didn't see before. But I need fewer boundaries because the integrity of my structure serves that purpose. And that feels like freedom. Meaning when my structure has integrity and I don't have to run around mantling and dismantling boundaries everywhere I go, I have the freedom just to show up and be who and how I am, and to be with other people who and how they are to the best of our abilities. I'm going to make mistakes. They're going to make mistakes. We might be able to work it out. We might not. Who knows? That's down the line. I'm talking about the freedom to move as an integrated structure, energetically, physically, mentally, emotionally, from place to place, without the word that comes to mind is reacting. Without reacting to everything that happens. I no longer have a desire, and I feel like I'm moving into the place where I no longer have a need to react to everybody else. It's sort of like giving them the responsibility, handing it back, saying like, you are responsible for your behavior. I no longer need to react to everything you do. I can concern myself with my structure, and I can do my best to relate to you, but I'm not responsible for you, and so I don't need to run around reacting to everything everyone does. And I would say I've been very good at that. Well, good at it, not in a good way. A little too good at it, reacting a little too much. So I just wanted to share that today for people who have built a lot of boundaries in their life in order to be safe. Not a problem. Absolutely. I've done it. I highly recommend it. But maybe you're starting to feel called that, some of these boundaries have outlived their usefulness. I no longer actually need some of these boundaries, that there's a way for me to integrate that into myself so that that boundary can just, fall away. And I don't even know that I have to go out and dismantle these boundaries that I've built in my life. I think that when I quit tending to them energetically, possibly even physically, emotionally, mentally, that they'll just dissolve, as things do. If you don't tend and care for something, it just naturally dissolves. And that includes in the energetic, mental, emotional realm. So I'm not even worried about dismantling any boundaries in my life. It doesn't concern me. That's not my interest. My interest is in integrating into my structure what is needed so I can move more wholly and fully through the world without a need or a desire to react. And maybe the desire will still be there because I can see I might have that initial reaction like, oh, I need to. But I might go, well, actually, do I? No, I actually don't need to do that. I don't need to create that old boundary. I can feel the integrity within myself to handle this situation in a new way. So maybe you're feeling called as well to integrate whatever purpose the boundary served. Can you integrate that into yourself and, let no longer need to tend and care for that boundary outside of yourself? It's something that can be done inside. Why does this have any relevance? I don't know. Maybe it doesn't. But I think it does. I think what it's going to allow, I believe it will allow more intimacy in my life, which is something I've been seeking. It will allow me to have more intimacy because I'll no longer need to sort of have these, they're not artificial boundaries, but they're certainly not integrated. To have these unintegrated boundaries outside of myself. To know that the intimacy is possible because the boundary, the quote boundary is still there, or I should say the function of the boundary. The function that the boundary was serving is still there, but it's been integrated inside of me. The function of the boundary is still there. But it's now inside of me. I am functionally able to do what the boundary needed to do. That's integration. And that is the structure that I'm building. I'm integrating my boundaries. I'm integrating the function of my boundaries, not the boundary. I'm integrating the function of my boundary into myself, into a structure. So I can still function the same, but it's integrated into my structure, into me. And that just leads to a more full-bodied, whole-bodied presence, ability to relate more wholly and fully, both giving and receiving, to participate more wholly and fully. And it just feels like so much less weight, the heaviness, meaning if you're constantly creating and holding up all these boundaries, it's a lot of weight. It takes a lot of energy. It's a lot of weight to carry around, not just physically, but just the weight, the mental weight, energetically holding and creating these boundaries. So it just feels like a lot of freedom when you're able to incorporate the function of boundaries into your own structure and begin to move through the world in that integrated way. So this is not a dismissal of boundaries in any way. I would say it's a reclamation of parts of myself that it's interesting. I hadn't thought of that before, but in this moment it feels like my boundaries served a function of sort of like a placeholder for parts of myself that I was not able to claim or reclaim. And now that I'm reclaiming those parts of myself, the function, the reclamation also reclaims the function of the boundary, and so I don't need it anymore. Never thought of it that way, but it's almost like the boundaries represented unclaimed parts of myself, and I needed them there until I was able to reclaim them. And now that I'm reclaiming more and more parts of myself, I no longer need no longer need the representation of the boundary, because its function is served in the reclamation. That in reclaiming all of ourselves, we are integrated, and the function is served. We don't need the boundary. I had no idea that what I just said fascinates the hell out of me. I had no idea that energetically boundaries represented the unclaimed parts of ourselves. And that in reclaiming those parts of myself, not only do I integrate them, but I integrate the function of the boundary. In reclaiming those parts of myself, I not only reclaim the part of myself, but I also integrate the function of the boundary. So I no longer need the boundary, because I've reclaimed that part of myself and the function it served as a boundary. And isn't it interesting that in the reclaiming of myself, I feel lighter? You would think that somehow reclaiming yourself, like you were taking yourself back on, you might feel heavier, but it doesn't. It feels like a freedom. I'm more and more free to be me, which takes away so much of the heaviness. It's almost like by not reclaiming myself, I was carrying all this weight. And that kind of irony is just always, I swear, at the root of the beauty of life. So much of the beauty of life lies in the irony or the contradiction or the mystery, the seeming mystery of it all. So it feels really good to, now I understand why it feels so good to dismantle the boundaries and just have an integrated structure, because I am reclaiming myself. I'm reclaiming those parts of myself I haven't been able to. And that's why it feels so good to just reclaim those parts of myself, integrate the function that the boundary served, and be a more whole, integrous structure. So, very, very cool stuff to me. I love it. I'm super fascinated to see where this goes. And I hope it's helpful in some way. Maybe you feel like it's time to reclaim a part of yourself, and you'll realize when you do that a boundary naturally begins to fade away, and that the function it served is now integrated into you, and you're able just to move with more ease through the world. So beautiful. All right, you guys all have a beautiful day. Bye-bye.